Welcome to Realty Plus Masterclass webinar. I am Sapna Srivastava, editor for Realty Plus magazine. And the topic for today's webinar is Manpower Strategies Post Lockdown. A very pertinent topic. I think everyone is discussing this. How do we, the organization will manage their business continuity plans, how they are going to manage their strategies for the manpower, the management, and the workspaces once hopefully very soon, and I'm sure in a very phased and limited way, we'll start getting back to work. So before we go on to the discussion, a very small brief on what Realty Plus is all about. So Realty Plus is a publication that belongs to Exchange for Media and Business World Group. We have been part of the real estate industry for more than 15 years now, and our monthly publication, Realty Plus magazine, covers all aspects of real estate, from finance, design, development, legal, government policies, and we try to bring value addition to all segments of this sector and building and construction segments. A very coveted annual product from Realty Plus is the Realty Plus coffee table book, which is annually every year we design this collector's edition on a specific topic, from affordable housing projects of the year, luxury projects of the year, top 100 developers of the year. Very recently we did it on top building products brands of the year, and we are also coming out with marvels of real estate, which will enlist top 100 real estate projects from across the country with very exclusive information on all these projects. So a very dynamic product that we have, very much liked product that we have from Realty Plus. So these are the print editions that we produce. Apart from print editions, we also have physical events. So Realty Plus Conclave and Excellence Awards, it is held across 7 cities of the country. Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Bangalore, Pune, Gujarat, and the latest edition is Hyderabad. So the whole idea of these physical events is that we bring together the professionals from various segments of the sector for discussing on very topical issues of that region, and also felicitate individuals and companies for good work that they are doing in varied segments of building, construction, real estate, finance, marketing, and all the other aspects of this segment. Moving on, obviously, apart from the physical, now we are also present in the digital space. So our print magazine is available digitally as e-edition on our website. Our newsletter, which is an e-newsletter, goes to the entire database with the latest news and stories for the benefit of all the stakeholders and our readers. Our e-events consist of the webinar, like the one that we have today, and also the Realty Plus Real Talk series, which is the video interviews that we do for industry experts who bring their honest views and opinions and the real facts and figures on various segments, again, of this sector. And we are also very strong on social media. So our digital connect, which happens through all the social media platforms, whether it is Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, we connect with our readers, we connect with our stakeholders, we connect with our partners, and we promote our products on these social media platforms. So this was the small brief of what we are, the Realty Plus is, and anything more that you would like to know, what we are doing, what we plan to do in future, in next few months, please do log into our website, www.realtyplusmag.com. Coming back to this session today, we already, you already must have been listening to the speakers who were candidly talking about this topic and discussing some of the topics that we are going to discuss. I'll just inform you, we have another set of panelists who will be joining in later in this discussion, and I promise this will give a very interesting twist to the entire session that we have today. So before we reach that point of discussion, I will introduce the speakers for today. For the first panel that will be starting the discussion. So first of all, the moderator of this discussion, a very eminent thought leader, and an expert in various segments of human resources, talent management, change management. We have with us Dr. Adil Malia, who's the CEO and founder for his company, The Firm. Welcome, Dr. Malia. Big responsibility of moderating this issue, this discussion.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Now I will introduce the speakers in a alphabetical order. So first of all, we have Aditya Adyar. He's the head human resources, Piramal Realty. Welcome, Aditya, to this webinar today.
Thank you, Sapna.
Next, we have Mr. Arrman Chaudhry. He is the President, People and Culture, M3M India. He's joining us from Delhi. Welcome, Arrman, to the webinar. I think Arrman is joining in 2 minutes or so. So we move on to Dr. Bhagirath Shanbhag. He's a very experienced professional in this segment. He's General Manager and Head HR and CSR, L&T Realty. Dr. Shanbhag, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Sapna. Good morning and thank you, Sapna.
Thank you. So the legal voice that we have on the panel today is Richa Mohanty Rao. She's the Partner Employment Laws at Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. Welcome, Richa.
Thank you, Sapna. Good morning to all.
Good morning, Richa. The next lady that we have on this session is Ruhie Pande. She is the Chief Human Resource Officer for Godrej Housing Finance and Godrej Fund Management. Ruhie, welcome to the session.
Thank you very much, Sapna. Very happy to be here. Good morning to everyone.
Yes, great for us too. And lastly, we have veteran of the industry, a very distinguished professional, Mr. Sanjay Dutt. He is the MD, Managing Director and CEO of Tata Realty and Infrastructure Limited. Pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Dutt, today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Dr. Adil, I'll hand it over to you from now and we'll commence the discussion.
So thank you very much, Sapna, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you're able to see me because I'm having some connectivity problem where possibly my video is not there. But do confirm to me if you can see me.
Yes, we will do.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
All right. It's good. It's the voice of the deep reality that you will get to hear now. I hope so. So good morning to
Arrman, hi.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
And all of you to join in as fellow panelists and the others who are listening out here. Can't really say that it is a moment of great pleasure considering the kind of situation which is very grim, uncertain and grave at this point of time. I hope we were talking in much pleasurable situation than at a different point of time. But it is also a fact that mankind has this huge ability to sit together, positively converse, invest collective energy, and find collaborative solutions to the challenges it faces. So to that extent, I feel very happy to moderate and in fact to moderate the narratives of this discussion, which is on this panel, with a galaxy of professionals. Serious leadership directions that they're getting. For a minute before I go to the panelists and ask my relevant questions to them, real estate sector, as I would say, for the last 5 years or so, has suffered a series of successive calamities, or not in calamities, I would say paradigm redefining moments, one after the other. And let's for the next 1 minute or so have a reminiscence of what are these 5 or 6 very critical elements which have gone and impacted the realty sector. So the first came the RERA, and can't say RERA is good or bad because of course for the industry it is a very good thing that may have happened, but it was certainly one of the most important and the most critical.
I guess there is some audio issue from Mr. Malia's side. Sanjay, Dutt, would you like to respond? Just initiate the discussion with as a the
I'm
head
all
of
again.
an organization. If you can just respond to Mr. Malia.
I hope Adil is back and
Yeah.
Yeah, so I am back and I was talking about the 5 or 6 very paradigm redefining moments which have hit the realty sector. First of this was the coming of RERA. And of course, can't really say whether RERA was good or bad, but of course it is very good for the industry, but certainly the first paradigm redefining moment that came in was the RERA. Then was the industry was hit with demonetization. And of course, all of us who have been in the sector and we have been consulting so many of our clients, they all say that demonetization GST. The fourth is the shifting of the millennial mindset, where today the millennials really want to think very, very differently when it comes to ownership of investments or it comes to buying of housing assets, and they have a perspective which is totally different, which is yet another paradigm redefining moment. The next was the high cost inventory, which was bought at a point of time, but its unsurmountable debt trap is something that the industry is unable to catch up with. An acute need to professionalize the industry has been perceived over a period of time. And a lot of corporates who have come into the sector, which was earlier only family and legacy driven companies, the need has been felt to professionalize it, but the how to professionalize when talent is unable to detect because of its inability to pay on the higher compensations. And now the COVID hits, which also is going to hit the migrant labor, which has been involved in development of projects, managing of our labor camps, etc., as a greater challenge. So with this kind of a background, where most of the industries generally in the country are impacted by one or two factors, realty as a sector, if you were to analyze, was hit by 5 or 6 very critical paradigm redefining moments which have come in the way. So today, when we are going to be discussing with the erudite panelists that we have got out here, there are 4 clear threads of discussions that we need to undertake. One, of course, is the business one, which is talking about business, its liquidity, its debt trap, and leadership lens. Motivating compensation issues. And some of these are classical HR issues. So we have a set of 4 very erudite HR professionals to whom we will ask questions. And of course, there are a series of legal questions which always come to mind when we are discussing an event like this, because there are issues pertaining to legal, there are issues pertaining to payments, and all of those issues, for which, of course, we have again this young lady, Richa, who's from Cyril. So with this, my first to you, and that question will be to Sanjay. So Sanjay, the first thing is that this sector has already been hit by so many elements already, as I've discussed with you. If you were to isolate on top of it the coming of COVID, what do you believe is the immediate impact that COVID would have on the realty sector?
Can I take you to a slide if you're okay with it?
Sanjay, we will go on video mute so that bandwidth will be better. So those who are talking will come on video. Others will be on mute on video.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I hope you're able to see the slide that I've just put it on the screen.
Yes.
Try to be very brief as possible. So, we were deliberating amongst, stakeholders of the industry, and we felt, and like Dr. Adil said very correctly, the real estate sector was going through a little bit of turbulence last 10 years and been hit by many regulatory and statutory reforms that have taken place. And I would attribute those reforms partly because I think real estate sector was really at the very nascent stage of being a well-governed business. So perhaps the impact was felt more, but corporations who were only following good governance, discipline, and had proper structure, perhaps were not so impacted. So that's one point I want to quickly make. This slide that you see in front of you, starting from left to right, first takeaway is that the depth of the disruption that has happened because of COVID has gone deeper. And this, when I say deeper, basically has two impacts. One is it can take little longer than what we had assumed was the state of affairs of real estate prior to COVID. So this has added to the depth of recovery that is required for the sector. The second two curves, and these are just initial thoughts. It may be very different. We believe the office segment, which did 47 million square feet in top 8 cities in 2019, January to December calendar year, which was the highest office demand this country has seen ever. So somewhat very contradictory to what a lot of us believe real estate is going through, which is by and large is a view of residential segment and not the rest of real estate. And I wanted to make that point right up front. Real estate is not only residential, it is office, it is retail, it is housing logistics, it is hospitality, it is student accommodation, co-work, co-living, and list goes on. So we think that the office demand, which may take a setback because most corporates will freeze their headcount hiring and freeze their office take-up and capex, will take 1 or 2 years to gain confidence after they have assessed the nature of their business. The much more severe impact would be on the retail, which because it's generally a social close networking, contrary to what we're going through is social distancing, immediately impacted in terms of revenue and therefore will go through some headwinds. Warehousing, it's somewhat similar to office. It will bounce back. So we think more or less a V recovery, but spread over 2 years. That's just an estimate. As far as residential sector is concerned, because of depth, which I mentioned earlier, and because of liquidity and the financial sector's health, and now disruption in the job markets or insecurities amongst people or just generally a lack of confidence, no matter how much effort we make to come out of COVID, it will take time. And my estimate would be at least a year before we see normalcy. At least the fear perhaps may remain for about a year or two, even if we return to full normalcy. So that's where we expect the extended U-curve recovery. The impact of this is quite significant, in my opinion.
But so we will come back to the question, of course, would be first to someone like Ruhie. So Ruhie, right sizing of the organization is becoming a need and challenge in the given situation, because Sanjay was saying it's going to take 2 to 3 years to fully recover of this additional impact of COVID. So the question would be that on the one hand is this challenge to ensure that you are right sizing the organization. On the other hand, there's also the challenge of the employee morale, motive. Hello?
Adil, I'm sorry, I lost you right in between the question.
Yeah, so the classical quintessential challenge between the morale of the people who have got to work with you on the one hand and the challenge to sustain the organization by right-sizing it, and the two being contradictory at one end and at the same time complementary for the survival of the organization. How do you manage that balance?
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, Adil, for the question. And I wish there was a very easy and straight answer. In these times, I think all of us are learning. So I'll just like to give that disclaimer right up front. And Sanjay, I think, pointed out very clearly about how the recovery of the real estate sector, whether it's retail or commercial, is predicted. But again, like we are all discussing, these things are not very clear. I don't think anyone has the answers. I just have a couple of points here. I think in times like these, management, HR teams and employees, if there is a possibility, ought to work together. I often see that when challenges like this are thrown at employees, sometimes they themselves can come up with some really great solutions. The trick would be in two things. One is in involving employees right upfront in whatever plans you're doing, rather than keeping things non-transparent. Representative of employees, your second line leadership, if people can get involved and are very transparently sharing with them what are the challenges over the next 2 years going to be, how is it that best we can circumvent. And the reality is that things will get hit. It is impossible that people will come out of this completely unaffected. How do you minimize these impacts to employees? I think employees are intelligent themselves. Number two is, in situations like this, transparent communication, two-way communication is very critical. Sometimes things are ambiguous. Employees are, as on date, as we talk, feeling the pressure, feeling the ambiguity. There are discussions about job cuts in all WhatsApp groups, newspapers, everywhere. So if we can have town halls, if we can transparently tell employees what's coming their way, be a little humane about it, have these constant discussions between HR teams, line leaders, display some empathy. I think a full-blown program, very specific to the organization. Godrej may be very different. Tata's will have its own challenges. Again, these are two very established names. I'm sure the smaller developers would be doing these things, but involvement, transparency, and communication, I think these three would be key to creating a plan which is not just
predominantly communication and engagement.
Yes, certainly.
Communication and engagement become very critical at this point.
Communication and engagement is super critical, and Adil, participation.
Right.
People, for some reason, keep employee groups away from these discussions. They believe they have all the answers. We don't. Your younger employees, your line leaders can come up with better answers. And in such change management, in such times, I have at least seen one experience I've had in the past of right sizing, doing things very differently in an organization in my previous stint. These things really work. So those would be my two bits.
Sure. Good. Thanks. That's really a good idea about how, organizations from the people perspective are going to find a way forward to it. My question, and of course, the most important questions will constantly go to Richa, because at this point of time, in the immediate moment of adversity, there are a number of legal questions which are coming to mind. So Richa, my first question would be that, the most important question people seem to be asking is deduction of wages. Can you force people to take leave for the period? On the one hand, there are these normal laws. On the other hand, there are the sustenance questions. On the third hand, there is this special, government of India kind of a regulation which is coming out saying you can't make deductions. So what do you want people to make sense of? How do you want them to take a position in the industry from a legal perspective, which will be protective, at the same time not demoralizing? Richa?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes. Thank you, Adilji. I was on mute. Yeah. So I've heard your question. Right. So just to give you all a little bit of background, I think it's important to understand that, what is the genesis of, the kind of restrictions that are being imposed right now. So very briefly, I think it's important to understand that the central government as well as the state government, what they have done is that they have exercised their powers under two statutes. The state governments under the Epidemic Diseases Act and the central government under the Disaster Management Act. They have imposed a lot of restrictions on employers today as it stands as of now. And they have issued orders as well as advisories asking employers to basically ensure that whether you're an industry or a shops and establishment, you have to ensure that full wages are paid to workers on the due date at the workplace for the entire duration of the lockdown. I'm specifically referring to an MHA order under the Disaster Management Act of March 29th, which will be, because under that, the central government has given directions to the states to take this into account. And of course, this was essentially in the context of migrant workers, in light of the mass exodus of migrant workers that happened once the PM announced the lockdown, and to avoid them to cross the state borders, etc. But there was one bullet there for the employers to consider, and which is what I just explained, where they said that all where workers have to be paid all wages, etc. on time. So what is important here to note is that the central government has extraordinary powers under the Disaster Management Act, and they have used their powers to not just give instructions to the states, but also the police authorities, the local state authorities. They all have been made personally liable to make sure that the implementation of this order is done. Now, this will continue for the extended period of lockdown as well. And in light of this, what happens is that there is a risk of prosecution. So if you are taking any unilateral action against employees today, so if you're terminating their employment or if you're reducing their wages in a unilateral manner, that will be subject, that there is a risk of prosecution under the IPC, under the Disaster Management Act and the Epidemic Diseases Act. So basically—
So Richa, what is your advice? Sorry, Richa, I'm disturbing your question. Sorry to disturb your flow, but what therefore is your advice? What should companies do? On the one hand, there is a chance that for all the Supreme Court may turn around and say, yes, the industry has also think in terms of its own survival. At the same time, of course, there is this employee advocacy issue that is up, for which the Disaster Management Act has provided to ensure the payments, etc. So what is your immediate advice to the companies and in the real estate sector? What should they be doing about making payments, leave, etc.?
Right. So I think the approach really here would be that you try, if you are making any such sort of reductions in leave or in salaries, etc., then there you should do it with mutual consent. Because if it is not a unilateral action, I would say that the risk of any prosecution under these acts would be very low and minimal. Of course, again here I'd like to draw a distinction between the white collar workers as well as the blue collared workers. I think the risk will increasingly sort of be higher in case of the lower level employees, the blue collared employees, or the workers, so to speak, and the risk would be lower for the higher rung in the organization. Now, these orders and notifications, of course, as you're aware, this could be subject to challenge, because it's always currently it's questionable whether the government can actually issue such orders asking employers not to take certain actions under the Disaster Management and Epidemic Diseases Act, which essentially deal with controlling of the disaster and not really a labor law in that sense. As you mentioned, Adilji, there are 2 writ petitions also that have been filed, by employers, in one in Maharashtra and one in Punjab, challenging this very provision in the MHA and asking the Supreme Court to actually read down the order to exclude it. But till such time that the Supreme Court clarifies this position, I would say that given the risk of prosecution under these statutes, any sort of mutual way of dealing with the situation is preferable. And again, for lower level employees, try and keep that humane element intact and see that, what kind of percentage are you reducing, that even with consent, is it something that, raises questions of survival, or is this something that can actually be sustained? So these are some of the considerations to keep in mind. And like I said, the risk is higher for the lower level employees, and the risk is considerably lower for the higher level employees.
So would be, in the first instance, it'd be better to pay the amount as an advance and then see how the matter turns out? So if, God forbid, a judgment was to come saying that, yes, the employers are allowed to make deductions, if you have given it as an advance, you can recover it. Is that the right way to go?
Well, it can be sort of structured by way of an advance. But again, I will say that, it depends entirely on, I mean, this is something that we'll have to sort of discuss with the employees, and they have to understand what the parameters of this are. So I think if you are, again, doing it by way of, a consent route, it should be okay.
All right. Thank you. And we'll come back to you. There are many questions, so you're not going away so easy.
Sure.
The next question is, of course, from Dr. Bhagirath. Doc, what is your impression in the last 20-25 days? We are seeing people talking so much about work from home, and they are working, and husbands are working, and wives are feverishly working from home. Is this a reality? Is work from home really happening, or is it just a superficiality, a sense of feeling that you're working? Is contribution of work happening?
Adil, let me be very frank. It's a very transition period for real estate. Very few organizations are working from home. So first of all, it is just like a transition for the entire sector. So in my mind, what we need to see as an organization and as a leader, this whole concept we need to see as a we care versus, we monitor kind of a thing. So that is first thing which I want to say. Second is, even people are working from home, my experience is there is a lot of concern for organization. So people are and leaders are looking at both the things as a trade-off, means what will happen to organization and what is going to happen for people. Now there, I think there's a concrete thing, because this pandemic has created two kind of a thing. One is definitely the coronavirus, and another is the economic. So on a trade-off side, there are a lot of suggestions to save organization. Everybody is looking at in terms of how I can make my contribution to make my company safe. And there are a couple of things are happening in terms of how I can separate some kind of ideas in terms of good cost versus bad cost. So many suggestions are coming. So when I'm saying good cost, okay, fancy offices, unnecessary spending, bad performance, traditional way of working, can we change that? When I'm saying it's a good cost in terms of, creating smart, green, healthy kind of a working environment, whether we can look at it in terms of reviewing, some kind of a buffer, take care of doing a little bit of digital. So there are many things which is coming in last few days. People are looking at as a digital transformation as a top priority. People are discussing in terms of how we can do right sizing. They are not saying we'll freeze on recruitment, but can we bring in new employees who really can get right experience, not only getting the right experience, but to, some kind of new tools. So many things around that.
Yeah.
And
so Doctor, we'll come to this right off now, the question. Hello, Doctor, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm saying we will come to all of those large issues which you are touching on. The important thing was that is work really happening from home, or is it just a superficiality? It is just a kind of a mind thing that we feel we are working from home.
No, it is in my mind says people are committed, work is happening, though there is a high level of anxiety, but still people are working, and I have certain sharing by people. In fact, people started working more than 12 hours. It is at home, but a lot of things are coming. People are using technology, team meetings. There are a lot of recognitions happening. So they are spending time with family as well as work. So it is actually also giving a clue to industry. It is going to be a new way work from home. So that's my take.
Correct. Now, my next question, of course, is to Arrman. And Arrman, you have been involved in culture and people behaviors and things like that.
Yeah.
What is very important, there is going to be a psychological implication of this confinement and working from home, particularly this domesticity and domestic issues of house, husband, wife, children, all trying to work from a small space. Do you really believe there is going to be a psychological impact of all of this on people and their behaviors?
Sure.
Arrman,
yes. Am I audible?
Yes.
All right. Adil, of course, there is going to be a psychological impact. We've been noticing it as HR professionals happening to our people, who we've worked with on a daily basis. Of course, the whole uncertainty around the fact that how will this whole situation pan out now? When will the pandemic be over? Will there be a second wave? A lot of information and inputs coming on the social media about large organizations going down, people losing their jobs, companies cutting down on salaries. Of course, yes, there will be and there is a lot of psychological impact at the moment. And as HR professionals, we need to really take care of our people at the moment. And the only key here, and I second what Ruhie said, of course, you need to involve the line managers. You need to quickly recalibrate your value system, your value statements, the tenets of your organizational existence. Get people on board, especially the line managers, because purpose washing at this stage won't work. You actually have to create a culture and all leaders have to live it. They have to very transparently talk to the line managers and tell them the situation that the organization is going with, the challenges that lie ahead, how we will all have to fight together to get over this, and how people can contribute more and ensure that the organization gets out. Of course, we need to supplement it with a lot of inputs in terms of employee engagement initiatives. So from a time where we used to talk about efficiency enhancement or providing leadership training, I think we'll have to look at more of an emotional training, in the sense of getting people to move on to some sort of meditation session, some mental wellness sort of sessions, relaxation techniques, because there is so much anxiety. And as rightly said by Dr. Bhagirath, people. Sorry.
Arrman, the question is that classical realty organizations are legacy organizations, family-owned legacy organizations, and of course, subsequently now the larger.
Sorry, I lost you there, Adil.
How their culture have to change to cope with the flexibility?
Sorry, I lost you there, Adil. I couldn't hear what you said.
Okay, so one is saying is that whilst on the one hand, there are those large corporates who are into realty sector and the story for them is different, yes. A large chunk of realty is represented by legacy family organizations which have been in the building and development space. Yes. Now, most of these cultures are very traditional, classically very rigid, etc., etc. Now is a paradigm redefining moment. What do you believe should be your advice, or what's your advice to those organizations which are family legacy organizations and who need to change with the changing times?
See, ultimately, Adil, an organization is all about its people. It has always been like that. It'll always be like that. And unless we don't want to look at the long-term scenario, you'll ultimately need people. You can't be taking a knee-jerk or a short-term view of the manpower situation. Well, of course, legacy organizations, since, and I'm assuming that they do not have adequate professional support at the moment, people who could guide them on the right ways, scientific ways, and professional ways of managing the business. I think very basically, they should just look at three things: how their work is going to change, how the workforce needs to change, and how the workplace needs to change for them. But ultimately, I think the ultimate human value, of keeping people as your most precious assets will come in very handy, especially in these tough times when organizations need to relook all their business strategies and ways of working, and then handle this tough situation together. So you'll have to take people together, have to give them importance, you'll have to give them confidence, and also share your anxieties as an employer or as the promoter, and let them help you in getting over this tough phase.
Thank you. That's good. The next question, of course, is for Aditya. And, Aditya, you are part of a very large corporate kind of a sector, which at one point of time was a family legacy business, which has now corporatized itself in the form of Piramal Realty. Now, the question is that, most of the realty sector is operating with this large peoples in labor camps and things like that, where migratory labor will have to be taken care of on the one hand, versus the social distancing and those kind of requirements in the COVID situation. So how do you propose to handle that situation when it comes?
Right. So I didn't get the last part of your question.
So the so how are you as a company preparing yourself to be able to cope with this labor, which will be working in labor camps, which will be working at the site, where they will have to stay not necessarily in the best of the living conditions on the one hand, versus the reality for social distancing and those kind of challenges which will be required for them to observe in the post-COVID period.
True. That's very true. I think they are a very critical and integral part of each construction site. So just before this panel was starting, I was also speaking to Sanjay, where he was also mentioning that they are really taking care of the labor camps. It's a similar situation for us. Even at this point of time, each of our sites has more than 1,000 people, where at this point of time, we are taking care of the food, the way they live, the social distancing norms, even for them, and also the hygiene, the disinfecting, and so on. And even post-COVID, when the work will really start, I think how we plan to do for white-collar workers, similar norms will come in for even the construction workers, where right from disinfecting to social distancing norms, we'll have to do it. And for most of our sites, let's say we are having the laser thermometers in place, taking care of their health regularly. We have one full-time doctor in each of the sites, and let's say there are 2-3 sites close by there. Even the doctors are regularly visiting, and we are taking care of them. And in fact, we need to show to them that we really will take care of them during these times. Otherwise, there is a chance of mass exodus as well. So unless it's not only a business requirement, but it's actually human for us to do all of these things. Otherwise, it could.
Aditya, the greater challenge is not that. The greater challenge is that after doing all of this, can you imagine that if one person is found to be suffering from this infection, the entire site will be locked down? Now, do you understand the implication? One man at your site suffering from the disease, and the government comes around and says, we are blocking you out. 20 days, you can't do nothing about it. What happens to the value chain? What happens to the cost? What happens to the labor? How does it progress? So that's the greater challenge. Of course, we are all taking care of our people and all of that.
Of course. Those situations are inevitable, God forbid. Like even we are seeing that in all the industries, even during the pre-COVID, when pre the lockdown also, where let's say there was one person who was suffering from such a situation, even in an IT organization, the entire IT office had to be shut down. So this situation will can arise in certain sites, but we'll have to take all the precautions so that it won't spread, and possibly have all the control mechanisms in place that the place will be properly quarantined, and we'll have to take all the pre-disinfectant and treatments and so on, so that we actually don't face such situation. But yeah, if such situation occurs, then I'm sure it will turn out to be a problem.
So I'm going to put the same question and flip it over to Sanjay. Sanjay, as a CEO, does this worry you that, one man on your site suffering from this problem could actually create a lockdown for 20 days at your entire project site? Sanjay?
Sorry, I was on mute. It does worry us. We have over 6,000 workers across the country, of which 2,500 currently are being looked after in labor camps. And while fortunately for us, we have always been very proactive in making sure that the living conditions are good, and the looking after of the laborers is kind of adhered to, and the contractors that we have taken on board are companies which themselves actually put a lot of discipline and importance to all these aspects. So they're our partners right now to ensure that these things actually on the ground are not compromised. But the fear of this spread, and I was sharing, so far we've not had any situation, but as things start, it can happen, and the sites will have to be then dealt with. We have developed certain SOPs where we ensure that there are clusters of workers. So we know the touch points from entering the site to finishing and going back to the labor camp. And therefore, we are minimizing that exposure across 1,000 workers to perhaps 50 workers or 100 workers. But the government may still come out and do what they think is safe for them to do. I think as a responsible organization, we'll have to act and accept in the larger interest of everybody's safety. And therefore, that means the obvious consequences that we'll have to endure, which basically means cost increases, and therefore we have to absorb those cost increases. As it is, because of no work, but still salary is going out, what we call a concept of idle working charges to the laborers are built into the contract. So we are paying. So the cost will grow overall, not to mention the cost of capital that we pay for construction loans. So overall, there's a financial setback that most developers will have to absorb.
Right. And what about offices, Sanjay? You will have a similar problem. Are your offices designed to be able to work with the 6 feet distancing and all of those kind of requirements? Are the Realty offices in places like Bombay designed for that?
Yes, we have 6 million square feet of portfolio, which is leased portfolio. The biggest park is Ramanujam IT Park in Chennai, where we have over 50,000 employees working in multiple shifts. We have engaged with occupiers extensively. We have our own SOPs. We are thinking about changing timings when they come in. As you know, government has allowed 50% of the workforce in IT to come. So different timings, different gates within the office premises of the IT company, different zones. There was also a discussion of making sure, and we have health facilities within the parks to ensure that they are looked after. We have dedicated space for quarantine people. And we have all the necessary preparatory work done, whether it's marking on the floor and monitoring the movement. We will keep the food courts shut. We've asked all the companies to bring food from home. So they will eat in their respective desks. There will be no socializing whatsoever. And they will wear proper equipment, which is certified to ensure the risk is minimized. So I will say it will never be eliminated because that risk will always remain. But we have taken a very, very serious note. And unfortunately, some of these large organizations who are our occupiers, they themselves are quite conscious. So they're global Fortune 100s. They're actually putting more measures. One quick takeaway, while the government has announced 50% opening, most corporates have come back and say, we don't want to start immediately. They're actually going to take 1 month to 2 months to gradually ramp up. So, and which I think is very sensible. We ourselves are thinking of, as our own employees don't need to ramp up the offices immediately. We will actually go on need to required basis only. And I think we've been able to minimize the exposure there quite substantially. Most of the corporates have acted very responsibly, I must say.
Sanjay, I'm tempted to ask you one more question, if you will allow me to do that. Sure. Because to get a managing director of a company and not ask him a question, what is the message you have given to the next line of leadership and thereafter in recurrence to the other lines of leadership? What is the leadership message that you are giving to your entire workforce? What are the leadership communication, conversations, and narratives you have told them?
You know, we've been on this path for last 2 years where we have kind of restructured our business, and therefore a lot of messages have gone last 2 years. But one which resonates with Tata Group's work ethos is that you act responsibly, you show empathy, you show care, you take every measure that is possible to ensure the safety of people. So as a company, we do not differentiate between employees, construction workers, vendors, and customers. For 4 buckets have only one color, which is called people. And therefore, whatever that needs to be done has to be done. The vendor's payment should be made immediately. That's very important to care for the people who are working on our sites and working for our projects. Employees' medical needs are to be addressed. Workers' medical insurances have been initiated. So every aspect of care for people has been communicated. That's the single most powerful message. The second or third message are somewhat overlapping each other, which is, I think we've been seeing disruption in real estate for last 10 years. And I keep saying that in every forum when I go to. This is the new normal. So Delhi has pollution problem, Bombay has flooding issues, Chennai gets tsunami every once in a while, Bangalore has traffic chaos, there is infrastructure work going on in everything is disrupted. And every once in a while, the government, with all the good intent of making reforms and making the sector transparent and regulated, disrupts the business. And then, of course, we have disruption from the financial sector. And then we have disruptions on the statutory side, whether it's RERA and others, all with well intentions. So takeaway from this is that you have to build an agile organization, which is nimble-footed, very light, outsources more in terms of expertise. I think this situation will clearly demonstrate the cost-benefit analysis of conventional construction and precast construction, which now is more sensible because it reduces human intervention. So that will accelerate. So you will see much lighter version of organizations going forward, which basically means a high performance organization and not a conventional. So I believe the downsides in whether it was global financial crisis, whether it was demonetization, GST implementation, every such situation has given this country the opportunity to think deeply and reinvent themselves. And that possibility with this situation, I would say, is the upside of the downside. And therefore, organizations which demonstrate speed, which will happen over next 3 to 6 months, you will see who will come out stronger, will show the resilience in their business model. And the ones who would not will actually seize or, not sustain.
True. So actually the quintessential message, of course, is that a leadership that succeeds in thriving on chaos, and chaos is the new normal. So the leadership that succeeds in directing and driving the company through the chaos to continue to deliver value is the one that will really submit. So do I get that message right?
Yes. Also, people start working collaboratively. The fear factor drives everybody together. They are more open to each other. They're more open to collaborate because they know the obvious consequences of it's not happening. So we see all these as strengths, and we want our leaders to leverage all this.
Sure. The next question, of course, again, is coming to the legal part of it. There are so many people and so many ways that, Richa, we have been employing people. So there are lots of contract labor. Now, what will continue to be the liability of the principal employers who are hiring people not directly, but through the contractor? Can they pass on the responsibility to the contractor and say that, yes, you are supposed to pay for it, these regulations apply only to the regular employees and not to contract labor? And can they push on these responsibilities to the contractors? And then naturally there is a contract between the company and the contractor, which is driven by the terms of the contract. So therefore, can they use those terms to take away the responsibilities?
Yeah. So I think currently, if you see the way these NHA orders are worded, they use the term worker. So again, it's very wide in its ambit, and this could very well include your contract labor as well. So that's one point that I wanted to make upfront. So in that context, that responsibility will lie with the principal employer somewhere as well. In fact, after the MHA order of 29 March, the Chief Labour Commissioner used this order and sort of issued further instructions and directives to deputies across the country to say that, if you get any distress calls from employees, please attend to that. Please speak to the principal employers. Please speak to the employers. So therefore that, it's sort of clear that the government is not really restricting this and not taking it on a technical ground to say that, you're only responsible for your employees on rolls. But it can be stretched to the point that, you will also be responsible for your contract labor. That is one. Second is, yes, I mean, I'm sure you can, take use of your contract and say that, okay, these are the responsibilities that the contractor has to fulfill. But the fact is that, even when this COVID situation is not in place, the CLRA Act, which is the Contract Labor Regulation Act, it has a very clear provision to say that, if the contractor does not pay the salaries, then you will have to make that payment. Yeah. And of course, you can have a recovery to that, but that obligation is already on you. So the way I see it, the contract labor are also quite well protected under the current labor law regime, and there will be responsibilities on you. So the best way to deal with it would be that, if you are making your payments on time and you are ensuring that, there's some sort of receipt or some sort of proof that you're taking from the contractors in connection with all dues, etc. There, I think you can demonstrate that you have done what you were required to do under law. And that will put you in a better position.
Thank you, Richa. Question to Dr. Bhagirath. Bhagirath ji, one or two ways in which you believe that the future of work in the construction industry is now going to change because of what all we are experiencing. Of course, Sanjay did give an idea of one or two ways in which it may change, but what, according to you, and you've been an industry veteran yourself, what do you really believe is the way in which future of work will change in the construction industry as a result of COVID?
I see, Adil, definitely a lot of things will change because of this thing, which I feel it's a golden opportunity. Number of things will change. As I rightly said earlier, digital transformation will happen. Right kind of staffing will happen. I also see some kind of a risk in terms of talent loss, what happened during 2008, 2010. So there's a lot of things one needs to see and also explore. One is definitely on the workmen side, because a lot of migrated workmen are coming and then they are going back. So there's one challenge at the industry level as well as other professionals. I feel at an industry level, some kind of we need to coming together through real estate HR forum or something to see that how we can retain talent in the industry so that we'll not repeat what happened during 2008, 2010. Some of the things like, because this is a difficult time, but there will be steep and definitely there will be a bouncing back effect. So we really need to see there will be going to be a talent shortage. If we come together, we look at an industry level, sharing with each other and see that talent not going out of a sector, that will be a great thing in my mind.
Super. Question for Ruhie. Ruhie, this is a very peculiar kind of question I have in mind. This is the time which is available where people would be available to the HR departments and to the organization for their developmental requirement, because there is a lesser pressure and people are available at home. So possibly you could use this time far more fruitfully to do their own development and things like that. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, considering the kind of anxiety people have in their minds, and anxious minds are not learning minds. So therefore it is not the right time also to be able to do development when the minds are in anxiety. So what is your recommendation? How do you go around looking at this kind of situation?
Absolutely, Adil. I think, yeah, thanks. Thanks, Adil, for that question. And I think as HR professionals, we're all guilty of using HR jargons, using this opportunity to say, let's create a nice learning and development plan. But the reality is that, all of us are completely, confused, anxious, like you rightly said. In my experience, and I like I again said, I don't know if this is the right answer, it seems to work for us. What we did is that we connected with all employees and asked them a fundamental question that, what is one capability you'd like to develop this month? So just breaking the entire learning and development strategy into some very plausible questions is there a capability you'd like to focus? What is the capability you want to develop for yourself? What is the capability you want to develop for your team? And taking that as an input. And again, those capabilities may completely not be in line with what you would have thought or what you would have planned at the beginning of the year. But just to understand from an employee's perspective, if that's the capability he or she wants to create, we worked with all the supervisors to customize programs for each and every member through e-learning. Some sessions through e-learning, some sessions which were workshops, more discussion based. And again, the answers we got were really varying. Some came back and said, parenting in such times when, you know, you're coped up in the office with you're coped up at home with your children. How do you multitask better? In this situation, how can I look at my career? Some are very specific functional skills, and you can tie up with bodies like Cyril, etc. And then we went around. It obviously meant a little additional work for us, but then we went around assigning modules. We went around, I like what Sanjay said, agility. That's, I think, the name of the game. Some of these course contents were not available with us, but fortunately in the market, a lot is, whether it's from YouTube, Cyril, Udemy. There are so many partners, and quickly partnered, chalked out plans and send these modules out to people. The other thing which I also told my team, and I think is important in these times, is usually, you know, we're always following up. Here's what was allocated to you. Have you finished it? We kind of allocated it them and left it a little democratic. The second thing which Adil, I find will really work, and I think somebody mentioned it, I think Dr. Bhagirath, is this time is a great opportunity to create a very deep psychological contract with employees, because you know, this is going to be a tough challenge for the entire real estate sector. And great talent may look at greener pastures, may look at thinking that, is this the right sector? You can't work from home. Real estate would be more fraught with challenges than maybe an FMCG, and thereby some great talent which you attracted, which all of us attracted with difficulty, may look at migrating out. So proactively identifying and having career and connect conversations with people. So saying, what is that learning trajectory you want to look at? How are you planning to grow previous to this COVID striking? And now in light of this COVID, what should be the new revamped career plan? And having some of these conversations, I personally anchored maybe 20, 30 of these in the last 2 weeks. I think it really helps. The discussions are very broad. They often are not to the, you know, to the checklist you might have created, but you do end up getting some great input. And like I said, a psychological contract with an employee created during adversity, I think is a very difficult contract to be broken. And it'll also not just help in development, it'll also help us in retaining great talent. So those would be my 2 bits.
Sure. Again, a question for Richa. Richa, the most important question of all debates: can this current situation be declared as force majeure? Which means that, can we declare it as an act of God? And therefore, contracts, etc., people, can it get the benefit of the force majeure definition?
Right.
Richa?
So I think, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can.
So yeah, I think it will entirely depend on you know, the way that it has been worded in the contract, and sort of what you're trying to sort of claim out of it. But yes, I think I would, to answer it very briefly, broadly, this could come within that ambit, because it is not just an act of God. Usually this definition is broad enough to include other instances as well. But again, before you take any action, each clause is has to be sort of, in a contract, has to be looked at very carefully and very minutely to sort of see whether this can be exercised as such or not.
Good, but what if it is established that this is an act of man and actually it was generated in a laboratory? Therefore, can it be treated as an act of God?
Sorry, I didn't catch that question.
So suppose at some point of time, if it is established that it was created in a man-made thing, which was created in a laboratory in China, and it is not really a natural calamity that happened, could it be declared as an act of God?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion on that, but I think scientifically, till that sort of is established, I mean, again, you'll go back to how your clause is worded and whether it is included more broadly to include such acts or not. For example, I mean, an act of God could be very specific to, say, a natural disaster or a calamity. But typically, there could be other clauses that are included in your contract, which could be, say, war or terrorism, etc., which are not necessarily act of God, but they're act of man. So again, I'll say that, it entirely depends. When you're trying to exercise a force majeure clause, really, you'll have to look at that clause very specifically and sort of analyze whether you can take refuge under it. It won't be, possible to give a view which is, just based on the principles of law.
Super. Thank you very much. Question for Arrman. Arrman, take us through some practices which you believe are employee engagement practices at this point of time when people are stuck in their home. There is a domestic pressure, there is a psychological question, there is a question of affiliation. And at this point of time when the employee morale is at the lowest, what are some of the things that organizations can do to engage their people meaningfully? Arrmanji.
Specifically, Adil, I think the most important thing is for leaders to be seen, not just the HR leaders, but of course leaders across functions, across levels. They need to talk to people at this critical stage. We need to take care of two things. So the optimism has to be bounded and the despair has to be muted a little bit. So there has to be a fine balance. We cannot seem to be in despair, or we cannot be too bullish about the whole situation. So one, of course, is leaders need to be seen, number one. Number two, and I've been reading a lot about it, and this is going to gain a lot of prominence. All organizations, I think, and everybody today sitting at home, all of a sudden has realized how badly most of us were planned in terms of our finances, in terms of our, our debts and assets. I think one of the best engagement strategies at this moment could be to get into a situation where we teach people on how to avoid being in this situation again. So financial prudence, how do you plan for a situation like this again? How do you ensure that you're not impacted with this again? A lot of people are also in an introspection mode. And we have a lot of youngsters. So our employee average age is about 36. And I usually am in touch with a lot of people, talking to them. The whole idea of job for a lot of people is changing from what it would give me to what it will make me. People have realized the importance of what they actually need in life. So they kind of took a break from this whole running around business in routines where one was just on the treadmill and not realizing, what were they up to. So people have now kind of started realizing what this life is all about. Why are you running so hard? What is it that you actually need? So in fact, there's a whole lot of quotes about, the cost of living is not high, the cost of lifestyle is. A lot of employees coming back have started questioning internally whether this job is making me into a better version of myself. Am I becoming a better human being? Am I able to add on to my talents? Am I able to become more emotionally balanced, more holistic in terms of my learning of business, so that tomorrow if there is a situation that I lose my job, can I do a consulting? Can I do a freelancing? Can I become a gig worker, support somebody? So all our engagement activities need to move towards that part. The whole idea of making your employees more whole, more productive as individuals, not just as professionals. Of course, when they become better human beings, they become better individuals, they'll become better professionals. We need to focus on their families, how they need to deal with this time, how they need to be in control of their emotions, how they don't need to take out their anxieties and insecurities on their families who are right there and who are, who run the risk of first casualty in this sort of a situation. So I think a lot needs to be done in terms of just calming down the nerves and telling people this has happened in the past. This kind of happens once every 100 years. This will also be over. We will all get out of this. Things will look up and we'll all be happy and satisfied again. But yes, you'll have to start as an organization, as HR, start to look at the deeper meanings that people will pursue now in their lives. your jobs, your career plans, your compensation strategies, all need to be aligned accordingly. Your tech strategy needs to be aligned accordingly. You need to, like Ruhie said, you need to look at specific policies and schemes that now allow people to spend more time with their families, with their kids, with their dependent parents who are old. So yeah, so a whole lot needs to be done. And
but Arrman, actually on a lighter note, Arrman, I think I have been getting feedback that people are saying that, yeah, okay, you know, the new experience of work from home is actually making us believe we actually want to work from office. Question, Aditya, for you is, which part of the value chain in the construction industry, considering that it is more EPC driven, engineering, procurement, construction, project management driven, which part of this value chain can actually operate from home?
Yeah, so I think even at this point of time, if you see, for us, things like strategy, finance, the IT support functions, most of them can actually work from home. Even we have started identifying, even as we speak, probably we are thinking that 20% of the workforce can indefinitely work from home even after the production starts. Even let's say we go full scale post 1 year, and just let's say the lockdown is lifted, let's say in a month or 2 months, I don't know when, but at that point of time, can we work in shifts 50% to ensure that we can actually be productive? And as we speak, we are seeing that a lot of departmental heads are saying that we are being more productive this way working from home because people are attending meetings on time. So apart from that, when we see, I still think that the core teams which are there, like probably engineering and construction, will still have to spend a lot of time at sites eventually once the entire thing is back to normal. But there will still be a lot of support functions, including the design and development team with all the web tools which people are now proficient with. These can start continue to work from home. Probably a lot of practices which are prevalent in IT.
But Aditya, does it worry you?
Sorry?
So Aditya, but does it worry you that if people start working from home, as consumers, they are going to use lesser and lesser of your product which you are coming out for them? So more the people work at home, lesser is your demand creation. Actually, it is good that they work from home, but it is also bad for the industry. The demand product will go down. Worry you?
So I think at least for the residential sector in the long term, I think it won't affect. But yeah, true. For commercial sector, I think if this becomes a long-term phenomena, yes, it does affect for some time. But yeah, at least in Indian scenario, if you see, as what even Sanjay was saying, there could be a L-shaped curve for some time, but eventually there will be a recovery. So if it's a long-term strategy, like for instance, we were saying that some IT companies are saying that they also will work for, they also will do work from home for 20% of their people eventually. Yes, there will be an effect.
Adilji, should we get the other set of speakers also?
Sorry?
Should we get the other set of speakers also in the discussion now?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I think we should. So will you get them
Sanjay had to,
you wanted
to add something to Mr. Bhagirath's reply. Sanjay, you wanted to add something?
Mute. Sanjay, you are on mute.
Yes, I just realized, excuse me for that. No, at that time I had something else in my mind, but just to pick up the last comment from Aditya, you know, when call center operations, we lost 40,000 jobs to Philippines. We had these fears of, you know, demand going down in office. I remember most of the IT companies used to take 100 square feet per person. And now they reduce the requirement to 65 to 70 square feet per person. So demand has gone down. Most of the IT companies that I've worked with in last 15, 20 years, I know they're 30% of workforce is remote. In fact, the entire concept of outsourcing to India is remote work. Guys are not working in US anymore. Remember, they are working in India to begin with. Then came the discussion 3 years ago, and I was part of a large board listed entity of a REIT, where they said artificial intelligence is going to take away all the jobs that we have in this country. And after all of that happened, we clocked the highest office absorption in 2019 to 47 million square feet. So the takeaway for me is, while the business requirement and the actual space requirement per company may come down, which is absolutely fine. And I agree with Aditya and everybody else on the panel and many other experts outside this discussion. But the fact that the global economy is growing, the fact that the Indian conglomerates and Indian multinational companies are growing, just like residential is based on domestic consumption, office is based on global consumption. So it is not linked to India consumption at all. So when something goes, so Apple has set up their back office in Hyderabad. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of them have ramped up their back offices in India, continue to expand. Amazon is the recent entrant in e-commerce space. The other concern a lot of companies had was 50%, which used to be 70% of office demand in IT parks used to be from IT companies. Now it is only 40% of IT companies using IT parks. 55% are non-IT companies. They are banking, pharmaceutical, e-commerce, telecom, etc., etc., etc. So the dependency has gone down on IT as a sector. Even though with these disruptions, the overall size of the global economy will grow, and the dollar-rupee relationship, which is to our India advantage as export of services become cheaper. So overall competitiveness and the talent pool that we have harnessed and groomed and experienced workforce that we have built in this country, and the scale at which it can further take and absorb, gives India, at least for next 10 years, a sustainable play, which basically means on an average 30 million square feet conservatively will still be there. It was 47 last year, mind you. I'm saying 30. And by doing 30, we will cross 1 billion square feet in a very short period of time. So that's a very strong position. And if you add this 70 to 100 square feet per person, that same person will require 1,000 square feet of apartment. Not everybody will buy it. Many millennials will think of Uberization, but still there'll be enough demand for this country to sustain. So it's not a doomsday, I can clearly tell you, but there'll be some corrections, there'll be some disruptions, and there'll be consolidation in the sector, which is badly needed and has happened. And this will accelerate that to happen.
That's fantastic. I think, that's a very positive note for all of us. In fact, another positive news is that right now 7,000 people are watching us on Facebook Live. So I've been constantly getting messages. When we started, it was 2,000, then 3,000, 5,000, and now we are 7,000 people watching us. So on that note, as I said, that we have a very interesting twist, and there'll be another set of speakers who will be joining us. So I'll first of all, I will thank our associates without whom this webinar would not have been possible. Mr. Amit Goenka, he's the Managing Director and CEO of Nisus Finance. He is part of our second panel. Hi Amit, thank you.
Hi Sapna. Hi everybody.
And Tushar Rathod, Chief Executive C and Recruit. He's our another associate, and he's been a great help with this webinar. Hi Tushar, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
I now introduce Abhishek Kapoor. He's the Chief Operating Officer for Puravankara Limited. So he's here as our speaker. Hi Abhishek, welcome to the webinar and joining in.
Thank you, Sapna. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Smita Mitra is the head for HR, Gera Developments Private Limited from Pune. Hi Smita, welcome.
Hi Sapna, thank you.
And all our panelists, they had been listening to the discussion, they have been there, and now we look forward to hearing their views. A lot of discussions have been happening on all aspects. So Abhishek, what you would like to add, your views or some questions that you would like to present.
So, I think the last conversation that was happening was on a positive note. When we started this entire panel discussion, I think it was a lot of grim outlook. My view is slightly different, and I think I like to look at glass as half full rather than half empty. And I think if I start from there, I have a couple of comments to make. One is, if you look at the China numbers, in March, they have tripled their sales in the real estate sector from what they were doing in February. It is coming back to normalcy. Of course, there will be disruptions, there will be challenges, but if you look at them, they are ahead of the curve for us, and they are bouncing back. There is a pent-up demand which they're talking about, which is creating the absorption that's happening in China today. Second is, I think, we kind of, as a sentiment, we do swing to the extremes, and that's something that one needs to stabilize. And there is a middle path which has to be kept in mind when you're looking at business. The other piece which I just wanted to bring out is, of course, the way people are looking at China now. India has an opportunity. India is the only alternate country with the population that we have, the demographics we have. I think there will be a lot of rethinking and financial and political realignment that will happen world over. How much advantage India is able to take of that is a question mark, but I believe, and I'm optimistic, that we will take advantage of that. So these are two positives. I think in the short term, there will be tremendous amount of pain. There will be challenges, no question about it, and people will have to take certain decisions and to sustain, to survive. As Sanjay correctly said, there will be a lot of consolidation in the business. So that's definitely there. So keeping that context, I think there is a tremendous amount of cultural shift that is going to happen in the way we live, the way we work, and the way we entertain ourselves. And our business, specifically real estate, is related to all three. Because of that cultural shift, I think businesses will have to quickly recalibrate and reimagine the way they are functioning, the way they are operating across the value chain. And only if you are able to do that will you come on to the other side. And when you do, of course, I think sky is going to be the limit, because my view is India is the only other alternate growth engine in the world. So coming to I had a couple of questions, and let me throw that at some of you panelists, and let me hear what you guys have to say. One was, strategy derives HR, right? HR follows what is it that you're going to do in the short, medium, and long term. Because people is the most valuable and costliest asset an organization has, and we all know that. Now, how do you, in an environment like this, align to business strategy, which itself is fairly dynamic? I don't know if Sanjay is also there on the panels. Yeah, he's there. I can see him there.
Yes, yes, sir.
So I'll leave it open to him also, and to some of you who can put some light. And also, so that's for the HR piece. The other question is, as a business head, as a CEO or MD of a company, how does business take decision on HR in the short, medium, and long term? So I think both these questions in an environment of this nature. So I leave that these two questions on the panel to ask. Yeah.
Well, so coming, I'd like to just add a little bit of thing. Of course, a whole lot needs to be reimagined. A whole lot needs to be redone. So as they say, you cannot fit new business scenarios into old organization structures. Yeah. So gone are the days of luxury. I think frugal is going to be the key word for organization. And as Sanjay rightly said, agile, nimble-footed, of course, will be the ways of survival, not excellence. So organizations will of course need to let go of redundancies, will need to let go of layered structures where there's a lot of bureaucracy of people reporting into each other, and then one person reviewing the report and giving his comments and the other one taking a call, and then meeting of 7-8 people. So of course, no, all of that is going to go out. The biggest challenge would of course be to avoid severance by deferring some stuff. So you could look at deferring some payouts. You could look at comp structuring in a manner where you align people to achievement of objectives. So you tell people clearly, this is what we need to deliver as an organization. We're deferring a certain part now, maybe a bonus or an incentive or something that the person is supposed to get. You help us in doing this, you get 3x of this. But currently our cash flows do not support, a sort of a very lenient kind of an outlook. So if in all fairness, honesty and transparency, if you talk to people and you make them realize that it's better that all of us sail through the situation than some of us falling off the board, I think everybody will listen. It'll take a hell lot of truth, of conviction, of being transparent, of putting up the data and analysis right there, organizational scenario. But of course, this is a time that the organization actually has to talk about, being that cliched family term that we use. So this is the time when the family concept will come into play. Organizations need to act as families where everybody is concerned about each other's well-being, and then take collective strategies. So from a top-down sort of a approach, we as leaders and as HR will definitely need to move the control of business decisions into the hands of CFTs and line managers. So if there is a time to create some sort of partnership and collaboration forums, it is now. Only your people together can get you out of the organization. Of course, there are some tough calls that the leadership and the management and the HR fraternity will need to take a call on. But I guess it's going to be better if we could retain jobs, continue to keep people along, and defer some of the rewards and incentives and bonuses.
In fact, so Arrman, what I would add on to this is that yes, cost cutting is very important, but cut your cost without destroying your value. So, like a surgeon knows that the spoiled part has to be cut off, but he also knows simultaneously on the operation theater that he does not have to cut the muscle or does not have to cut the bone. Yeah. So cut your cost, but not destroy value.
I just want to add, Abhishek, your question, and it is coming from what immediately needs to be done. Okay, and there where as a business HR partner, I really need to see trade-off in what way I'm going to help organization and what way I'm going to help employees. Now, first challenge for me is government is going to tell us extension, all that is going to happen. They will do what they want to do. What I need to do and work with my leadership team is what are the options available. Wait and watch situation is not going to be a starter. Okay, so I need to see what are the options available, what I can do with my leadership team. It's like, get up and do it yourself kind of thing. While doing that, as Adil rightly said, there's a risk. In case anything happens, then, your campus get locked for 3 weeks or whatever. So can I also look at some kind of a war room and on people's side, so that all kind of, so there is one team who is really helping in terms of health and safety of the employees. It's like a circling, like a Lakshman Resha. So you take care of your employees not getting into that situation and business continuity you ensure. Second way, as a leader, how you set on the positivity, what kind of a caring thing you create, people understand today. Okay, so one can say, yes, this is the right time to turn around. So I will look at as a new mantra, explore all those things, keep my shop in shape. Means first I need to see safety of my company, then rest of the things are coming in. So how business should start first, that will solve my maximum problem. Today what is happening, I'm not doing any invoicing, but my salary cost, my other standard deduction, all that is happening. So nothing is coming but many things going out. Once I start get answers, So we are in the middle of the tunnel. So my suggestion first as a business leader as well as HR partnering, think about how we can start with safety in mind so that we'll not get into the compliance issue, but we take care of, while doing that, golden opportunity to look at things, look at the digital way, look at innovative way. This is a time to look for a cost leadership. What are the ways and means we can reduce cost? I talked about good cost, bad cost, whatever. Then communication, what Ruhie rightly mentioned. So keep on constantly talking to people, because if the people are problem, they are also your solution. Okay. So they can people can come out and come with a lot of ideas. Like my CEO asked for certain ideas, within one day, 1,000 ideas, So there is nothing like, people want to come out. Everybody wants to put it to the table, right kind of thing to save company and the industry and the country. So that spirit needs to be seen, and anxiety will come down as we start progressing. So the balance, the trade-off, taking care of people side, taking care of organization side, and HR will play a major role from both the side, taking your leader. And this is the time the leadership will come in terms of how I can do better than my team, how I'm thinking proactively. So a little bit of risk is also involved in that. We need to take some calculative risk. It's like PDCA, plan, do, check, act. You plan something, you do, check, take one step behind, see whether it is happening. So all those safety measures, and I think this is the thing I am thinking. It's my, I may be wrong, but this is a perspective which I feel, Abhishek, I must share with you.
I think that's true. And also, Abhishek, to what you were saying, the situation in China where there was a rebound, I think on an optimistic level, that's bound to happen in India as well. We don't know when, but it could be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. But I think apart from what Bhagirath was just saying about the safety aspect, we should also have a crack team in each of our organization to be ready in case the rebound happens. For instance, in China, there are a lot of sales which are happening currently are digital. We should see whether we are ready to lead the digital curve, whether our sales team is really ready to do that virtual sales. Then are the design and construction teams, are they ready? In future, let's say we have less of labor availability. Is our design repetitive? Are we using construction technologies which are repetitive and can be built faster? Our team should be ready for this, and the HR team should actually support and ensure that we get the teams ready for all the up curve which happens.
Amit, can we have something?
Why don't I bring in Smita before I interviewed Sapna, because I do have a number of points which I've observed in the last hour and a half or hour and 15 minutes, but I'd like to get Smita to share her views as a professional, because Mumbai and Pune are clearly the most affected regions, but I think pan-India, and then somebody coming from Pune, I think it'd be interesting to also see the way they're reacting and thinking.
Okay. In fact, on Abhishek's question, if I could also just pitch in, I always thought that HR had already emerged and was already involved in business conversations. And I see a very, a clear requirement of us playing the balancing act at this point of time. So while, we also need to keep the organization goal or objective in mind, we're also looking at the well-being and aspects of our employees. And at this point of time, the things that we're really working on is, like a couple of people have already mentioned on the forum, creating a backup plan and backup team for the continuity, because we know the day we hit ground, it's going to be, a pretty humongous task for us. We're going to be covering up for a lot of time loss. Our focus largely as an organization is not, primarily on cost cutting, but our focus is more on driving improvements, looking at avenues where we can reduce the kind of wastage, whether it's in terms of, processes, whether it's in terms of time, or whether it's in terms of procurement, that we're currently undertaking. We're revisiting that entire piece to be ready to support business the day we open up. So I think that's exactly what we're trying to keep in place.
Right. So just jumping in now, one of the things clearly which have been brought out, and of course, Dr. Bhagirath mentioned, which is supplemented by Aditya, that we need to have war rooms, we need to have more strategic teams, we need to have, and therefore if work from home will be an on-off norm, and there are certain questions which have been answered, asked of from the people who are participating here, is do we need something equivalent to workplace management as family place management. We all talked about office spaces, workplace management, but now does that need to extend to family place management, including employee infrastructure at home, the ability to provide productivity, and to be able to meaningfully contribute to the goals and the shared vision of the organization as a whole, because clearly we haven't actually been prepared for that enough so far. So how does the HR teams actually reach out, or what is the thought process the organizations have in place to actually create a sustainable family place management program? And I would start with Dr. Bhagirath, and maybe Mr. Ruhie and Aditya could also add to what the organizations are doing.
Is your question is all about how they can balance both?
No, I think it's saying that there is now an inevitability of work from home. We have a continued start-stop environment. We've had best practices in workplace management. Clearly, we need to find a new normal in family place management, which means working from home. So what is it that the organizations are doing to create that infrastructure, create that ecosystem within the family place, and create a better family engagement to be able to bring forth such leadership into the organization?
I just kind of share just top of the mind what we did in last 1 month. We were just thinking in terms of some kind of recognition scheme, which can be balanced between your family and your work. So it is coming right from going out of the mile and working for organization tasks to going up to sitting with your kids and sending some kind of a messages, drawing in terms of on Corona, sitting at home. So from learning to involving families to painting to hobbies, all that, whether we can look at it 6-7 element, so that there is some structure about it, and there is a point system, like 100 points for each activity. And we say, as we resume, so we said from 1st April to 15th was the date earlier. So 1st to 14th, can you just capture all that, and then when we'll resume, you share that. So indirectly, what we are trying to say, you need to be a wholesome person. It's not only the work and work. So right from your IQ to EQ to SQ, spiritual quotient, right from yoga till the end, how you can look at it, and going up to the level, one interesting movie which you have seen with your family, which you really was missing for so many years. So how you are spending time with your family. So all those, small questions, but hitting hard, not going from everything from head. So balancing heart and head, which we just explore. We need to see how further we can. So now then we are saying from 15th, whether we can go up to 2nd May. Then something else will get add on. So it's a collaborative effort from HR and management, that how we can look at it, the entire thing. But let me be very frank, as we started is a transition period. First 1 month was very difficult. People are available, so everybody thinks on a phone call I can get it. Every half an hour's time you get a notice saying that get hooked to team meetings. So it's like Saturdays, Sundays, all that which is happening first 2-3 weeks. But people understood that this is a requirement of the time, and all of us need to, even families supporting for that. And our CEO nicely sending mails for females, sending mails for female employees, because they need to take care of everything. There is an official demand as well as a work demand. They have kids to take care. And after 2 weeks, the school online thing started. So there are multiple things the females are going through, and in ours is more than 30% female. So CEO talking about it, how we, and then appeal to their better off, saying that whether you can help female colleagues. So those kind of aspects came in. CEO talking about the hobbies on the music. So it is not only work, but talking about all other virtues which got into it, where families get attached, saying that, oh, your CEO is talking about music, your CEO is talking about book, his CEO is talking about songs, your CEO is talking about appreciation for female, spending time with family. So it was really, one way this is happening, another way the performance happening. So it was a good mix of that. And now things are in shape. So it is not there that now people are working 12 hours or something. People got into that flexibility. They started maintaining their calendar. They said, sir, I have these 2 webinars, I have this to attend. And we also gone on a lot of ATL programs and all that, right? Like Ruhie said, number of things on, because this is the best time, to learn. But we were thinking people should not lose focus. It should be in their domain. Something which is bothering them, something they are not able to handle, Some process they are not looked at, whether this is a time to introspect and look at it.
Excellent
This is a mixed bag which we try.
Early workplace management, clearly, I think, or home place management is essential. Ruhie, bringing you in, do you think what are the essential steps that organizations will need to do to maintain engagement, infrastructure, and continuity of work from home?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Amit. I think that's such a very relevant question on top of everyone's mind, and really great to meet your acquaintance Abhishek, Amit, Smita. Welcome to all of you. Tushar. So my 3-4 bits, Amit, and like I said again, there's no straight answer here or correct answer. I think first things first, we have to understand this is not work from home as usual. Godrej allows 2 days work from home. Usually every month employees can apply, whether they are in properties or in any other business. This is lockdown work from home, and thereby it means that we are all double hatting, triple hatting, men, women. I'd like to believe that all the men are equally participating in household chores. So we're all taking care of children, pets, elderly. We don't have any support at all. So initially, when this entire thing started, we were also guilty of not realizing. I think in our overzeal to ensure we are all productive, everyone went out of their way. We started having meetings at 8:15, and soon employees in the first fortnight started reaching burnout. And there we we understood this is lockdown work from home. We got to meet all the leaders and explain that to them. Second, I think it's important for all workplaces to create guidelines. I was reading the tweet of a very prominent leader who said that usually you would expect work from home to be professional, but we've given guidelines that please be very comfortable. If there's a pressure cooker whistle at the backdrop, if there's a pet in the picture, the child peeps in, you're not looking very glamorous today, or you're a little unkempt, please be very comfortable, because everyone's in it all together. Third, I think we have to set some firm guidelines, Amit. Before we get into engagement, I think the important thing is to ensure that people are able to do domestic chores as well as work, and all within the 12-13 hours they have stipulated in a day. I know that people were having calls till 1 o'clock in the night because they had to spend 4-5 hours doing household work. So we've created guidelines, 1 hour for lunch, what time can you log in, ideally, leave weekends out or rotational holidays out so that people can revamp. Last but not the least, completely agree with Bhagirath. Everything organizations are doing is impacting family more so today than earlier. They are able to see how is your mode. Are you getting demotivated by what your boss said? Are you very excited about what's happening? Papa went and Mama went and attended some video call, and now she's come back. So how do you ensure that your employees' energies don't get drained? Being very, very sensitive about what you're talking, because you are invading work life and office space. Both are getting superly invaded. And if there is any engagement strategy which you want to deploy, whether to extend EAP, employee counseling to families, you want to run some contests, bring your dog to work, bring your kid into the frame. I'm an animal lover, so sorry, keep bringing the pet angle in. Yeah. But drawing contests, etc., I think that comes last. So these are the 4-5 inputs from my end.
Arrman, just asking that same question, but again from a regional perspective, because clearly I think people in Bangalore or Mumbai or Pune may have a different outlook of what constitutes their work-life balance, but maybe people in the north may have a very different way of looking at things. So do you face these predicaments when you're trying to engage with people at home? Because knowing that till we don't have a cure and we don't have normalcy resuming, which we don't know how long it'll take, we will have this as a new normal. So do you see more idiosyncrasies at your end when you're trying to engage with people from home, and what kind of infrastructure or outreach are you planning for, or are you doing for them?
So Chief, initially we knew it's going to happen, these whole logistical issues. Thankfully, we work very closely with the government and the authorities. Our foundation has been working non-stop during this time. So we've been serving close to about 30,000 people all through the lockdown phase. So getting permissions for movement was not an issue, and hence we were able to tackle this in the very first week of the lockdown itself. So all systems and laptops from offices and documents required were moved to the houses of people who needed them. Because we are a Gurgaon only developer, there are no regional offices, so that made it even easier for us. So all that we had to, so the furthest we had to go was Noida. So we kind of deployed that. Our IT team worked across all 24 hours in shifts and ensured that there is connectivity. So that took care of the infra part of it. Of course, we understand that not anybody and everybody can have a formal office set up at home. People stay in joint families. The size of the dwelling units are different. So the whole idea was to just convey specific timings on which we would meet on a daily basis. For example, HR, if there is a tone setting meeting, it will happen at 9:30. People can accommodate their schedules around that. It'll only happen for 30 minutes. It'll only be specific to the targets for the day and not generic gyan. Generic gyan, phone calls. So you fix times. There was an initial mess where everybody wanted to just kind of do a Zoom call and a Skype and do everything. So we kind of gave an advisory, guys, not everything can be done. So this is just this is a very difficult situation. It's a lockdown. Don't try and be Superman or Superwoman. Look at doing things which you usually ignore while you're stuck in the office routine. So look at your SOPs, look at your policy documents, look at the relevance of the practices that have been deployed across your functions and the organizations. Look at design of the existing project, since you can't construct at the moment. Look at what sort of value addition. So I firmly believe, and we've kind of turned our people towards that in these 1 month or so. Cost leadership, people leadership, and the right contracting strategy. I think if organizations in real estate have to focus on something, it is this. You need people leaders who could drive agenda as well as people in this tough time. You need cost leaders who will look at cost across levels, and we don't use this cost cutting as this thing. Optimize it everywhere. Just ensure that the right amount of money is being spent. And third, of course, is the right contracting strategy. So how do you still engage your contractors when your cash flows will not allow you to give a premium? Is there a plan that you could offer them on a quicker completion of the project? So we've kind of diverted the mindset and the energy of our people towards thinking of these things. So the whole idea is, as soon as operations resume, which in our case, again, thankfully, because we work closely with the government, we resumed operations day before. So our corporate office has started working, our sales office has started working, and we are kind of looking at the sites to be mobilized at the moment, because we have about 7,000 people who are staying with us during this period, who we provided for. So we have people available to start the work. But yeah, so we kind of took the initial hustle bustle away and kind of told people, hang on guys, just look at strategy, just look at easy, comfortable things that can be done. Don't try and prove a point. We told the bosses also to not push people too much, because we also told them that we do not have any extraordinary expectations at this time from them as well. So the whole pressure was released top down. So yeah, a whole lot of...
That's excellent. That's excellent, Arrman. Smita, one of the panelists have also asked a question that being in Pune, and given that the number of containment zones in some cities like Mumbai and Pune higher, are there multi-tiered strategies for dealing with projects and people in different zones? Or is it a uniform strategy irrespective of where people are?
No, so of course, currently, of course, the entire city is under, the stringent hotspot zone, so to say. But what we've really done is, because we have widespread projects across Pune in the market, as well as Goa. Of course, Goa is progressing much better. But in Pune, we've kind of looked at each project differently, because we understand that, possibility of a particular zone opening up prior to the other could be, the zone opening rather would be pretty phased out. So like I said earlier, our plans are pretty much, to create alternative options for any of these projects to go live at any given point of time. So we're looking at them from a complete standalone perspective, and not, the entire organization going live together.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Tushar, over to you. And I think we'll start wrapping up, because I know it's 1:20. Our panelists have been at it for a while.
I think Tushar can ask few questions to Mr. Sanjay Dutt and Abhishek Kapoor, being, at the head of the organization.
I think we've kind of got amazing feedback from people on performance management and the HR issues. And coming from the leadership side, I already kind of hiring side, I see that organizations are already trying to fix strengthening certain departments of the organization. So like we are running searches on finance because people are anticipating that they have to kind of hire on the people to kind of fundraise. We are looking at demand in IT industry, IT side to kind of strengthen the IT backbone of the organization. So I have actually two questions, Sanjay and Abhishek, if you can give business perspective on these two. One is that what are the skills which you believe that organization will still end up hiring during these tough times? And the second question is more like an advice of yours to a lot of people who have challenges in terms of will a career break during these times be looked at negatively when the things look better and when they are kind of having opportunity to engage with organization dialogue for getting a next job. Over to you guys. Thanks.
Very quickly on your last question, I believe the organization's credibility and ability to retain talent will be demonstrated how they behave during this COVID-19 situation. So if you're not really looking after your talent, if you're not responding to their concerns and needs, if you're not dealing with the situation and you conduct yourself in a manner which is very knee-jerk reaction, people will remember that. And I think it spreads in the industry, and therefore you will never be able to attract good talent because you will always be concerned. And I think everybody wants stability and an organization where you can have freedom, empowerment, and grow. So that's one. Your earlier question was more to do about the sector overall. If you want to just clarify so that I make sure that I answer correctly.
So this is more to see the trend in terms of the skills which are in demand before we kind of hit the new normal.
Yeah.
So more than, so skill, of course, important. And like I was saying earlier in my conversation, that we need to have high performance people. There was a tendency where organizations were building very top heavy organizations. They were hiring really, very senior, all well experienced, of course, but they would need a layer and two more to actually add to, because they would not touch the work themselves. They will have it, they will delegate it. I think the mindset change or the skill change is that you want people who are hands-on. And I would say that for the CEO as much as for the CFO or the head of projects, HR, whoever, there was also a tendency to basically take third-party consultants' opinion. So we were then adding a layer of consultants because you thought you don't have the capability internally and you were outsourcing all the time. So you were building layers. So the organizations are looking at high performance, skilled, and more hands-on professionals who can actually do their own. So some skill requirement for this COVID specifically, perhaps not, but just to have a very disciplined, focused business, which the sector demands, is need of the hour. And therefore, how you can be agile and how can you be focused and continuously monitor sales per head count, cost per head count, millions of square feet per your manpower cost. And there are some benchmarks and dashboards that you should look at and follow industry standards and try and exceed those standards. So I think that's kind of workforce that you really want now.
Just adding a little 2 cents to this, can I, if
Yeah, Arrman.
Okay, just a few roles, and I've been very, very closely monitoring these roles, which are gaining a lot of prominence, which usually, are flocking towards the consulting side. So all of a sudden, the business process engineering guys are back in demand. So the BPR guys, people who rewrite your processes, who relook at this thing. Disruption experts, people who've seen organizations break down and have been there and kind of just got the organizations to come back. Tech is a skill and we are very aggressively looking at somebody who's been a wizard in tech, because tech is the future of workflows in the future. Planning guys who can ensure that everything is planned to a T, so that the redundancies while executing work on site is taken care of. Strategy guys. It's also, and just it's a very funny thing, but yeah, because of the lockdown, a lot of people, for example, from North living in Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, have missed their families so much. There's some people who were untouchable till about 3 months back, who now want to come back. So I think it's also a great time to lay your hands on some of these great guys who you would usually not get for your organization. So yeah, just a additional dimension.
I'm glad that from layoffs we are talking about new hiring. So Ruhie, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just three critical roles which I think, and I'm watching the space like Arrman, which are going to be in demand. Learning and development in HR, looking at different ways, e-learning, digital learning, call it whatever, and high quality analytics people, because now everyone will slice and dice data. The next era is going to be a lot about targeted hiring, targeted customer acquisition. And third, more than tech, I would say digital, because a lot of things will go virtual. So digital buying, I'm now in financial services. Earlier, I was in real estate. GPL sold a lot of its properties over the last 1 odd month through digital ways, virtual. So digital guys coming up with great solutions. These three skills would be really in demand.
I just want to add, Tushar, I think 2 points here. One is that technology is actually looked at as only piece of the digital space, or one piece of the function. Technology is actually across organization, and people will have to upskill themselves on a constant basis on the technology piece, which will include construction, which would include sales, marketing, it would include finance, it would include all of the functions. So technology is going to be constant in the space, and upskilling is going to be constant in the space. So you will have to look at people more than skills, I would say attitude and ability to constantly upskill themselves and be dynamic in their thinking, because as we've discussed and we've seen it, we've been 10 years into this whole ups and downs and the disruption that's been going on with the sector. It's the new way of the business cycles becoming shorter. It's less than 3 years now we are talking about. So ability to upskill and technology across functions is going to be something that people are going to definitely look at.
Sanjay, if I can ask you one more question. In terms of from a CEO perspective, as everybody's kind of working along with the HR heads to kind of discuss a lot of challenges and how to deal with it, what are your top 3 things in terms of expectation where your leadership guys in HR can add value, and what is it that you appreciate? And if there's any example you'd like to share about, do you think that, do you have to kind of relook at the performance levels at which we were, which we are used to? Do you think that it's a time to reset and go back and tell, look guys, we are expecting this level of performance, and because of these situation we are re-looking at to kind of help you to achieve your performance levels, right, from the organization perspective?
A lot of discussion in the industry is happening about between a variable and fixed. So traditionally, most businesses, in their quest to attract good talent, because it was a boom time, ended up taking their cost base very high. It was only during bust time that they started looking at the numbers, and many of them took strong decisions. I think in the sales and marketing, you have to allocate a very high percentage to variable. And maybe you need to give certain slabs in the variable which take you to, really high level of remuneration, which breaks the industry barriers. And there is no harm, because in the residential space, what it used to be 2 to 3% of brokerage has now reached 5 to 6% as an average. Why can't you give that 1 or 2% own staff and link it to the variable? Therefore, keep the fixed cost low. That's a no-brainer if you ask me. And I think the top leading firms will start the practice and eventually others will adopt. I did all my life in the consulting space. So that's one takeaway. Second, really, the point that I made earlier, but more importantly, as an organization, in last 2 years, we have implemented a lot of course correction, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to dwell on those, but one takeaway was that we were able to, we recruited about 200 people in 2 years. And there were many people who were made redundant, who were not fit, et cetera, as part of your natural business based on performance matrix, et cetera. So we felt a lot of these resources through a internal panel that we created of experts, and we also leveraged group companies to scan them, to see what kind of skills that they have which can be redeployed within our business and within our group. Tata Projects is into contracting, TC is into consulting, and therefore a lot of those initiatives were taken, which were, I think, would very helpful for us, and vice versa. We were able to take talent which actually had more strategic fit. So these 3-4 initiatives we took, clearly from projects point of view, we felt that real estate developments is no longer viable. And I'm making a very strong statement. And the reason I say they're no longer viable is because from minimum wages to the cost of governance, to the cost of compliance, to the cost of capital, all has gone up. And the slow and limited velocity has added to the long cycle of the project. And therefore that is, in a way, it's also addition to the cost. And everybody has changed. Everybody has re-engineered their system and processes. The only part of this real estate business which has not changed is the government. And therefore the holding cost, even today, you need wet signatures after everything being digitized by the banks, by the development companies, but you still have to physically do a signature by ink, put your thumb, and stand in the queue for 1 hour to register an agreement. That's not changed. Likewise, your permissions you can upload, but you still have to go and make your rounds to every body and town planning department to get your approvals. That has led to this 2 years period of environment and OC and all plans approvals, which takes the holding cost very high. So if all of this together, businesses are unviable. So the only way we can make this viable is by compressing the project cycle and saving 2 years of construction period. Yeah. So you need skills and the precast and 3D precast to make sure you compress and make your 15% IRR, forget about 18 and 20, which is a myth, in my opinion.
True.
I think we have had very insightful views from everyone, from the top management to HR management to from the recruitment and from the finance as well as from the law point of view. Dr. Adil, I would request you now to, if you can summarize the entire session that we had, the views that were expressed, and then we can pick up some audience questions for the panelists.
So I think summarization is very, very simple. We have all agreed that real estate as a sector has undergone in the last 5 to 7 years a series of paradigm shifting moments, which, unlike other industries, have collectively come and started infecting the real estate sector. COVID adds a new dimension to these challenges, and therefore it is also defining the way things and the industry will operate in the future. And therefore, the questions pertaining to how people will be managed, how will we acquire talent, how will we ensure that the arbitrage of key talent that is required in the industry does not happen. And this industry, which badly requires good talent, do not lose on that scarce talent that is available, is a very important question. Also, how do we in the industry, we got some good ideas into how HR can help through communications alongside the leadership and also engage with the organization and build a strong emotional bonding with the people so that they become the partners who will continue to create value. That was on the one side. Of course, on the other side, we said that how this uberization of talent is going to be a critical element, and we will wonder what we will do and how will we manage that. Also, the financial traps, also the long-standing, and I love some of the points on communication, and the last point, particularly in which Sanjay really went around explaining as to how we are going to be in a deep trap if we don't go out. But what really is critical, as Abhishek rightly said, is this desire for a hope to find the ray of sunlight. And once we find the little ray, we are all going to work together to ensure that not only the sector, but the entire industry setup in the country finds a future perspective which is positive. We are all partners in that positive growth, and we are going to see brighter times ahead, collectively pulling all our energies in a collaborative success. And I think that's the kind of summarization I picked up. From a legal point of view, of course, the lawyers will find the lines and the undertones and the clauses and the sub-clauses. We will have to ensure that these disruptions which are happening in the industry, we have to find our leadership to be tiding over those realities, because disruptions in various ways will keep coming. What is important is how does leadership inspire people to find a solution? And with that high note, I will pass it on back to you as a kind of a summarization of what this fantastic panel brought such many elements of interesting dimensions to this problem in the last 1.5 to 2 hours. So Sapnaji, back to you.
Thank you, Adilji. That was a pretty, crisp summarization of what everyone discussed today. In fact, we were running a live poll, and as per the poll, 53% say that yes, there will be a spike in layoffs after the lockdown. So I don't know how true would that be. I hope not. But and 78% do agree that yes, companies are under a lot of financial stress. They do agree to that. And about 48% have expressed that employees may go to court for compensation and termination. So 48% is almost like 50-50 of what the feedback we got from our audience. Anything, now I will again go back to Mr. Sanjay Dutt and Mr. Abhishek Kapoor and Amit Goenka. If you can all three just give in your last words how you see things going forward. Your last wise words. Yeah.
I mean, I think Sanjay has obviously been at the helm of HR transformation at Tata Realty and Tata Housing for the past 2 years. So actually, we're very fortunate to have him, because actually put things in motion that were unimaginable. I think the metrics that he talks about, and it's unfortunate that we've not got into the core of his thought process and brain, if he can extract the vivid and rich experiences that he's been able to create and almost templatize the way things should work in a real estate firm. So Sanjay, I wish we had a specific one-on-one with you. I think for the industry, I think that would be very, very useful. But over to you to help close.
I believe we need to remain positive. I believe we need to treat in real estate there is a saying, it's all about location, location, location. You must have heard. And I remember saying that almost 10 years ago when I joined JLL as a CEO, and I was saying, okay, real estate is all about people, people, people. You design for people. And I think as a responsible business or a citizen, if you genuinely, like I heard Ruhie said a very important remark earlier in her session, to be transparent. You should be engaging people. And I think it's very important. Please do not bullshit anybody. There is a reality. They all are adults. You have to face it. you have to quickly go back to them and share the extent of the challenge. We have to reorganize as professionals and responsible employees of an organization. We have to come out with some solutions. Once you cross these hurdles, you start applying your brain and collective brain of everybody. We recently initiated among our leaders and people that please share your ideas that you think you always wanted to implement and would like to, and we have time, so why not deliberate and see. So much of enthusiasm, so much of empowerment and ability to engage with senior leadership helped people overcome their insecurities, fears, and the impact of COVID, from in job market. So once you get rid of those, and then you start looking at how things will come back. Are you as an organization ready to leverage the platform and the talent pool and the skills that you build to take advantage of this situation? And the moment you start applying your mind to it, and most businesses are multi-billion-dollar as far as organized development companies are concerned. For a certain cost of expenses on employees is actually insignificant in the larger scheme of things. Once you have a line of sight over next 2 to 3 years of what business opportunity that lies ahead, everything else becomes minuscule and insignificant. The concentration is basically how to achieve that medium to long-term goal. Therefore, you get ready. And therefore, if you apply those principles and keep the intent positive, you can overcome. And at the same time, I've said earlier, you need to be decisive as agile. So if you decided to do something and there is something that the situation demands, you should do so in the first linger on over a year, cause more insecurity. So that's very important in my opinion. And I think your actions as an organization will also decide the fate of the organization's ability to attract future talent. So that's equally important. Thank you, Amit, for giving the opportunity.
Thank you, Sanjay. Abhishek?
I will just quickly say, I think there is, in the medium term, in the long term, there is definitely business, and the country's outlook is definitely positive as we continue. Having said that, HR, I think, is going to play one of the most significant roles in the short and the medium term for the businesses, because business will expect very high productivity from every employee, because the businesses in the current environment are going to go through a lot of change. Performance measurement of the productivity is going to be extremely important. And the markets, the way they are going to be very challenging to put that matrix in place, even for assessment. So from that point of view, I think HR is going to have to work along with the business to align the entire organization to come together, because organizations going to go through a lot of change, because business will go through a lot of change. And when that alignment happens and the organization comes together as a team, is the only way that you would be able to come out of this in a much stronger and a positive way, and you'll be able to really multiply your growth when you come out on the other side. So I think there is a significant amount of work ahead of us, and we will have to make sure that we take care of our people and take them along and align them as a part of the organization's goals, which are going to be in the short term constantly evolving. So I think there is great amount of work for us to cut out together.
Thanks, Abhishek. Yeah, thank you so much. I think now we thank all our panelists here. It was a very engaging conversation, and we can, measure it by the kind of people, the number of people who are watching it. Still we have almost 6,000 people on the Facebook, watching it live, and more than 300 people on the Zoom. So thank you each and everyone for being here. Thank you, Dr. Adil, for such an able moderation of this panel. And as a closing note, we have, I would like to share that this is our contact. kirti@exchangeformedia.com to stay connected. A lot of audience questions I'm sure must have got addressed in this discussion, but whichever questions were left out, we will be creating a report on this entire discussion, and we will be sharing it with all our attendees, with all our panelists as well. So thank you everyone. Thank you so much. And I again on the parting note, I'd like to thank you. Our associates, Mr. Amit Goenka and Tushar Rathor, again for putting up this webinar with us.
Thank you, Sapna, for the opportunity. It's extraordinary to see such accomplished professionals on single platform.
Yes,
I think HR is going to lead the way for the sector, and I think we have the best in breed available today with us. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you, Ruhie. Thank you, Richa. Thank you, Sanjay Dutt, Abhishek Kapoor. Thank you so much. Dr. Bhagirath, thank you very much. Ruhie Pande, thanks a lot for joining in.
Please share the questions.
Yes, I will.
There is a lot of learning which happens through questions.
Arrman, yes, Arrman, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thanks,
Adilji, thank you. Adilji, thank you very much. Adilji.
Bye,
Adilji, thank you so much for
Thank you.
such a great conversation that you conducted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sapna. Thank you, Adilji.
Yeah. Thanks all. Yeah.
Thank you, Aditya.
Take care, Mama.
Yeah. Thanks, Tushar.
Take care, buddy.
Thanks, Adilji.
Thanks, Arrman.
Thanks, Smita.